So today's video is for those of you who are feeling really paralyzed and stuck because you have a deep desire, a knowing for something in your heart, and you are having a very painful, bumpy ride because your desire is coming up against the rocks of your belief system. And when it comes to manifestation, when we want something, we have identified a goal, but we haven't examined our current belief systems. We're not questioning our assumptions. Then this creates a breeding ground for a lot of pain, suffering, frustration, learned helplessness, and can really make our lives worse since having come to the world of manifestation. So before I get into it, I will introduce myself. My name is Chana. I am a manifestation coach, spiritual teacher, energy healer. All of my work is centered around law of assumption and sourced in the wisdom of Kabbalah, and also I guess I would say a hybrid, but it's all one. It's all the same wisdom, just expressed in different terms. But I blend it with a transurfing reality model, which I just find that, so for example, I used to do CrossFit. And for anyone who's ever done CrossFit, you know that there are some very technical maneuvers that if you're not a former gymnast, can really take some learning. Like, for example, butterfly pull-ups and double under jump ropes. And there were certain coaches, actually there was one coach whose words would always get me there. Like, just the way he explained things, I would get it, and then I would be able to do it. I would be able to physically manifest the movement I was trying to learn. And it's the same way with any kind of wisdom, but especially like self-concept work, identity, shifting. Sorry, making sure this is on because I get super frustrated. Okay, bye. Where because once our subconscious accepts something, then the behavior becomes automatic in the sense that, think about this, this is really good. You can hear this. Our nervous system responds automatically to the beliefs of our subconscious. That's why it is so important to program our subconscious intentionally. So a little bit more about me. I am a former police officer. I did that for almost 20 years, a divorce and family mediator. I still do coaching in that regard in general. And I just really want you to come to manifestation with a very healthy, psychologically healthy, grounded, practical approach. I am all into the spiritual and the woo and the energy, but it needs to be married to the physical, the material. I don't care if the material is 1% of it. It's the world of our five senses. We are not Buddhist monks over here meditating on a mountaintop and not having any contact with reality. All right. So fine. Let's get into today's topic. All right. It is really important when you start the process of learning the process of manifestation that you question everything about what you believe, what your assumptions are. And there are so many things that we just take for granted that we don't even think to question them. So, for example, and some of this is going to depend on, well, first of all of this is individual. There are certain assumptions and beliefs that I think all humans are kind of entrained into by the adults around them from the moment they're born. But obviously we know that there is a wide range of human experience on this planet. We know people who are born billionaire heirs, people who make huge fortunes working very few hours a day, people who work 80 hours a week and barely scrape together a living. and everything in between. So, what makes, and by the way, we also know that there can be two people who take the exact same actions in business. And one person's business grows to $1 million and the other person's business grows to $100,000. Exact same actions. Why? Because of their belief system, okay? And most of us are not even aware of our belief system because it is by design programmed into us from the age of birth through 7. We are just naturally downloading. Our tree of life is open, and our parents, our caregivers, the people around us are just, we are just coming to these assumptions. And they're not even doing it intentionally. It's not even the things that they say, it's our response to them. And so why is it that two siblings in the same house with the same parents can end up with very different belief systems? Because it's not what the parents say, it's the child's response to it. And why do they have a different response? Even if they're identical twins, so they would be genetically the same. And the answer is because we all have past lifetimes. Our soul has been through multiple incarnations on this planet. And when we come into this world, we choose our parents based on our previous incarnation in order to correct the lessons we didn't learn in our last incarnation. Now, if you're starting to feel like, oh wow, so I must have been a total jerk in my past lifetime and this is why I'm suffering in this lifetime, absolutely not. This is not the case. The reason is because the whole reason humans even exist is because before the Big Bang, when it was just us and the creator in the endless world, there was just the giver and the receiver, the light and the vessel, our collective unified vessel. We inherited the DNA of our creator and therefore also wanted to be creators. But we couldn't do that in the endless world because there was nobody to share with and give to and have a relationship with, because we were all one and the creator didn't need anything. He's was completely whole and is whole and perfect and infinite and had no lack. I guess oddly though, other than needing a relationship with us, which was why the original vessel was created. But I digress. And so therefore we asked to be placed into this darkened physical world where the Big Bang shattered us into countless sparks of that original vessel. You could think of it as a large mirror that shattered, and some of those sparks became trees, and others rocks, and animals, and humans, the highest form. And our job is to basically elevate those sparks, to put the puzzle piece back together, tikkun olam, the correction of the world. But how do we do that? So it goes back to our original purpose, to be creators. But what does that mean? So a lot of people, when they think of somebody who's creative, maybe before you came to the world of manifestation or the science of deliberate creation or the art of allowing or whatever you want to call it, when you would hear somebody say, oh, so and so is so creative, it would mean they were like, had really unique ideas when it came to art, right? That was always like the thing growing up in school. I was left-handed, so my friends would be like, oh, you're so creative. Because whatever, like the left hand corresponds to the right side of the brain, which is the more in the tree of life, that's chachma, that's like the male half of the brain, the open, poetic, music, ideas, flowing, no boundaries, free love, and is, anyways, like more receptive to the infinite realm of information. Okay. But really, creativity begins in the mind because everything is mental. The world is just you pushed out. It is your beliefs pushed out, projected onto the blank screen of reality. Everything is neutral. It's only our perception of it that makes it good or bad. So, oh, excuse me. Like the funny example that you always hear is if somebody was an alien from another planet and they saw this child in a chair, and the chair was tipped back, and there was a man in a white coat standing over the child with a drill, and the child was crying, and there was like people around the child, like not doing anything, just standing by, maybe even helping this person in the white coat, handing them tools. The alien would probably think and perceive this as being like some form of torture, not realizing that this was for the child's good, that they had a cavity and this was going to prevent things from getting worse and prevent other problems. And it was like a short amount of pain to correct a situation caused by whatever, not good brushing habits, and prevent future problems. So again, is the perception of, and a lot of this, if you read dream books, you can really, excuse me, get a better feel for this, because dream symbolism tells us so much about our perception. For example, a lot of people would probably think that getting arrested is a bad thing. However, a person having a dream that they were arrested means they are protected from harm. And if you think about it, like even in the real world, so again, I used to be a cop, and I knew that when I was arresting somebody, I was preventing them from causing further harm to themselves and others. Obviously, they didn't love it in the moment, or even if it was something that was over, like let's say, oh, excuse me, they had, I don't know, committed some act, and they weren't probably going to commit it again in that moment or even in the near future. Maybe it was like some one-time thing. But still, getting arrested shows us that our actions matter, which is really important. We really need to know that our actions matter. Just to go down a really quick rabbit hole, Adam, the first man, after he sinned and the sun went down, he thought that, this is Midrash, by the way, that was it, that it was just going to be darkness forever. That first it was light and then it was dark. He said he didn't know any better. He had never experienced darkness before because he sinned on the first day, 6 hours after he was made. I think it was 6 hours, within the 6 hours. Anyways, and when the sun came up the next day, he was actually like, oh my gosh, I did this horrible thing, and yet the sun still came up. So do my actions even matter? All right, fine. So back to this idea that, so what does it mean to be creative? So it means to consciously decide to choose to think a certain way. This is why you hear so much about resilience in schools and social emotional learning, because honestly, it's probably the most important quality, like resilience and grit and trust, right? Trust and faith. Not like in some magical thinking kind of way, although it is a little bit magical, but trust that there's a universal force of goodness that is supporting you. In transurfing reality, it's called outer intention, and it's really, it's in Kabbalah we call it the light, and you can call it God, whatever it is, whatever higher power you subscribe to. And anyways, so our acts of creation are really about our mental diet, our choosing our thoughts, choosing our feelings, choosing positivity over negativity. Now, notice I didn't say like bypassing, right? This is, and by the way, this is exactly what this video is about, is not bypassing. A lot of people come to this law of attraction, law of assumption, manifestation, and they're just like, oh my gosh, this is so great. I can, like, from this egoic place, they're like, I can just kind of egoically get what I want and control things, which is what the ego wants. But true assumption allowing is, it is not active. It is very, very passive. It is receiving. It is receptive. Kabbalah, the word itself, is a Hebrew word that means to receive. It is the feminine aspect, really, of God, if you want to call it that. We are feminine, all of us, in relation to God. Our souls, every single person's soul, is feminine, is a vessel in regard to God. Okay. So it really is about, by being the creators of our own reality, is to change our beliefs. And that is spiritual bypassing, is when you come across manifestation and instead of looking at your beliefs, you just start to like do it. Okay. No, your beliefs will block you, and then you'll get really frustrated and be like, this stuff doesn't work, and be in even a worse place than you were before. So, and this is the key in terms of looking at your assumptions and questioning everything. Like, again, people have assumptions that you get sick, you go to the doctor. You need legal help, you find a lawyer. Now, I guess with AI and for a long time, Google, people would be like, oh, I can just search things. But I think most of it, but even that is a huge problem, especially, and if you followed me for a while, you know that a lot of my manifestation talks, I am talking to those of you who are in family court, because a lot of you are going on AI and message boards, and I cannot caution you enough not to do this, because so many of you are just digging yourselves into this horrible hole, because the people on those message boards are there because they had really bad experiences and they want to complain, and misery loves company, and you guys are just accepting their stories and making it yours and finding all this evidence and proof, because the ego will always seek to prove you right. So once you pick up on something and you're like, oh, this is the way it is, like by default, the ego will, what do they call it? Confirmation bias or reticular activating system, right? When you start driving a Jeep, suddenly it's like every other car on the road is a Jeep. Or even when you're thinking about buying a particular kind of new car, all of a sudden you see it everywhere. And it was there before, but now you're seeing it because of your reticular activating system. So, and also with AI, they are just pulling information from other people's past cases. And at some point, everybody had to be first. Somebody had to be first. I will give you an example. In California, they have a particular body of law, Family Code 3044, in which abusive partners cannot get custody of kids. And they are just first to have this legislation, and other states are slowly starting to follow suit. But even like with marijuana becoming legal, at some point, some state was first. And I just see so many people feeling like, I should do this. I know this is wrong. In my heart, I feel this way, but either I'm not going to go to family court because it's going to be super expensive, and um, it's not going to work, and they're anti-mom or anti-dad or blah, blah, blah. And so they just remain really stuck and miserable. And then they try to like just accept their situation. Or they say, like, I would have to basically burn bridges and flip over cars to get the outcome I want. And I am here to tell you in the healthiest possible way that just because that was somebody else's story or a bunch of other people's story who came into some Facebook group and got together. So let's say there's like 800 people in the Facebook group like that. Well, how many people do you think get divorced every year? And by the way, why do some people just sail on through their divorce and others it's a complete travesty? I can share with you personally, I've had 2 divorces and they were at opposite ends of the spectrum, total polarization in terms of like in being different. And I guess I just had different belief systems about the different individuals. But my point here is, unless you want somebody's story to become yours, don't believe it. Test it out for yourself, and don't even test it out for yourself until you've really questioned their story and you have a strong foundation. I personally, I think the best model is, I can't remember if the book is Transurfing Reality. I think it's Reality Transurfing, steps 1 through 5. Because just the way, at least for me, the way he explains it is, instead of setting a goal and being like, okay, this doesn't exist yet, but I have to make it happen through all of this action, he talks about the alternative space, which is like the matrix, the grid, essentially. So if you're thinking of like Tron, there are different sectors in this alternative space. And creation is finished. So the outcome that you want, whatever it is, already exists. It's already done. You just need to line up with it and let it in. And so much of that is the nervous system and relaxing and allowing and opening up those energy channel meridians. I'm going to give you a quick exercise in a minute here because I need to go into my appointment here. But you aren't hearing, and because we are naturally programmed to be negative because that kept us alive and survived for so long, for millennia, most people think about what they don't want, what they're afraid of, and then it happens because, speaking of the nervous system being automatic, the hands do what the heart fears. Okay? It's really important to understand that. So you want to clear out those stones of fear in the heart, and it's not about suppressing. Again, we're not about spiritual bypassing here. Emotional processing is a key to healthy manifestation, which, by the way, there isn't even like an unhealthy version. It either works or it doesn't. So, and by doesn't, even like if you get a manifestation and then it's just a flash in the pan and then goes away, like that's not what we want here. We don't want temporary fulfillment. We want sustained fulfillment, eternal fulfillment. So it's really about knowing that we can choose our toy, that the soul, the heart can choose its toy, and just aligning and letting it in. And again, that doesn't mean we don't do anything. But for example, let's say a person has a belief system which they've picked up without questioning, assumption. They have an assumption that a family court is going to cost them $50,000, and they have this number in their head. So if they embark on that process with that number in their head, yes, that will be their experience. But let's say they question it and they start asking around and they find out there's a bunch of people who represented themselves and didn't have to pay anything and didn't really take that long, and they didn't have to be perfect about it. And yeah, they've had some weird things in their emotions because they didn't go to law school, and that's okay because judges don't expect people to be perfect. I mean, maybe obviously they expect more of lawyers because they know more. But I am telling you, I have seen, I don't even know if I'm allowed to say this, but some of the categorically like not smartest people in the courthouse representing themselves and doing a just fine job of it. And they're not even like trying. They're like showing up totally clueless. They don't know the paperwork, and there's like somebody in the room just like helping them through it. And honestly, being like simple and just open and naive is the best way. I meant to share this story in my last video and I forgot, so I'm going to share it now. When I was 20 years old and I moved out of my parents' house for the first time, I was 19, and I moved out of my parents' house for the first time. I was done with the police academy and I was, whatever, you don't need the details. I had decided I wanted a particular job at a particular place. This was before I became a cop. And like, I was so dumb that I didn't realize that it was a big industry. Okay. It was an industrial type of thing where I wanted this job. And it didn't occur to me that there would need to be an opening and it would have to be posted and there would have to be this whole interview process. Like in my mind, I just decided I wanted to work there because it made sense for me logistically. It was close to the school I was going to, it was close to the apartment I had, and it seemed super cool. And so I like literally went there and asked to speak to the manager of the department. I don't think I was even like dressed that nice. I might have been. I don't know. And he came out and I was just like, hey, I want to work here. And he's like, oh, well, why don't you come back to my office? And he invited me and he was super cool and like basically created a position for me that didn't even exist. It was the greatest job ever. I I feel like I have to tell you for this story to make sense. So it was security at a hospital, a big hospital, and I thought this would be great experience for going into the police department and like getting used to like wearing a uniform and working in a big city and a ER where they had lots of, excitement and chaos. And yeah, like in the downtime, I was able to get all of my homework and studying done. So I was able to work like 35 hours a week while I was in college. I was never a partier. And it was amazing. And like had I been like, oh, I have to wait for there to be an opening and then I have to apply, and what if I don't get it and there's all these other people, then it wouldn't have happened like that for me. But thank God I was so naive that it just happened. And we can be that way about everything. And this could be very triggering for some of you because you are so invested in the story that it has to be hard and a struggle, and like there's trophies for struggling, but the work is being simple with our creator. That is the key here, is simplicity, like a child, trusting your heart. And that is what needs to happen when you, and I'm going to speak again to those of you, those moms and dads who know that you need to give your kids a better life. And I'm not talking to those of you who are like bitter and resentful and seeing monsters in your ex that isn't really there. I'm talking about the ones that are like objectively have a really bad ex, but you're like, oh, the courts are anti-dad or the courts are anti-mom or it's going to be expensive. Like, stop that. Because that's your words. What you're saying is making that true for you. It's not true. There are so many people who just had this very simple belief that this is the way it should be, and they went to court and it wasn't. It was done. I'll leave you with one final story. There is a book. This is an author. She wrote 2 books. One is called Why Women Want, and the other is Drinking a Love Story. Her name is Carolyn something or other. I don't know. I don't remember which book this was in or if it was in an interview. In any event, she was telling a story about her parents. And when they were dating, or maybe they were married, I think they were dating, her father was a heavy duty smoker and the mother didn't like it. And she literally went up to this man. He was smoking a cigarette and she said, "These will kill you." And he never had another cigarette. Now, how many of us have tried to change somebody we're in a relationship with and beg them to stop a particular habit or doing a particular thing, and they didn't stop, and we got super frustrated and angry and judgmental and yada, yada, yada. She just said it one time and it was done. And that is some people's belief system, and so that is mirrored back to them through their experience. So I hope this was helpful. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to this channel. It really helps me reach other people who need to hear this wisdom, especially moms and dads who are feeling stuck and paralyzed and helpless, and in regard to their kids, and it's a legal situation, like to give them hope, right? In a very healthy, practical way that, of course, as a caveat, I always say that it cannot involve harming another person. We do not do black magic here, if for no other reason out of enlightened self-interest, because it's what goes around comes around. That is real. What the energy that you put out there boomerangs back to you. If you cause somebody else to be afraid, you will be afraid. That's why the saying goes, the guilty flee where none pursueth. The guilty fleeth where none pursueth. Because because it comes back to you, right? If you're hating somebody, if you're hating the world, that person will give you reasons to hate them. The world will give you reasons to hate them. Like if you've ever had that boss that you're imagining the arguments, like rehearsing the arguments with them in your head, and then sure enough, you go to work and you have that argument, and you're like, well, I knew that was coming. No, you created it. And I'm not saying you can just shift and imagine some wonderful reaction with them, but over time and with practice, you can, I will say this. This is a better way to say all of it. Instead of trying to figure out how to solve problems, because that's the mind calculating, manipulating, trying to control. And yes, sometimes our minds are this amazing gift in a certain way, but usually the way things are solved is the mind taps into the soul because we've raised our frequency to closer to that soul level. So stop trying to solve problems. That's not your job, and that's exhausting and draining. Just raise your vibration and you will naturally rise above the chaos, the problems, the issues. You'll like float into a different timeline, okay? And there are a lot of techniques for that. I promised you an energy technique. I will be really fast about this because I did not mean to ramble this long. This is called the transaction, okay? When you find you are leaking your energy horizontally, right, into the 1%, into the 3D reality, you are giving power to your manifestations, to the 3D. Pause. You can do this while you're walking, by the way. I like this one because it's motion based, where so much meditation is like, oh, you have to sit still, like we're busy, okay? You picture one arrow extending out the front of your body about 30 inches, another out the back of your body about 30 inches, so again horizontally, and in the center of your body, like right at your navel or like 2 inches below your navel. And then imagine them both aligning vertically, one going up, one going down, because we always want to take energy vertically, not horizontally. And energy vampires, by the way, they feed off other people's energy, because it's human energy, it's already been digested by that person. It's like processed and it's more digestible to these energy vampires. And we don't want to be that, by the way. So we don't take energy horizontally, take it vertically. People are there to love and to give to and to shine to, not to change. Remember, we get to choose, we don't get to change. Make yourself at home, but remember you're a guest. And know that your energy is now moving vertically, right? Keep those meridians open. Okay, I love you guys. I know this was a lot. I did not mean to ramble this long. I hope it was helpful. And I will see you in the next one. Bye.